Are you ready? Okay, I'd like to call the Economic Development Committee meeting to order on April 4th, 2024 at 3:30. Is there anybody from the public from the courtesy of the floor? Seeing none, we'll go to the presentation of the City of Easton.
So Tina Smith, the Director of the Department of Community and Economic Development, who does a fabulous job helping us both develop our economy and our community, will introduce Easton to make their LRTA presentation. As you know, LRTA is a powerful tool for revitalization. And what we've been talking about here is using tax incentive tools to do a couple different things. One, create the environment for economic development and job creation, and help us redevelop dilapidated properties. This LRTA device that we use to do that has been put to such good effect by the City of Easton. Tina Smith and our Director of Fiscal Affairs, Steve Barron, have taken a deep dive into the properties that have been suggested for LRTA in this particular package. And they are all exemplary properties for the LRTA designation. So our administration is 110% behind the granting of the LRTA designation to these properties. It will help our county seat continue its momentum in moving forward, and it will also help us do what we do using these tax incentive tools. So we could not be more supportive. And with that, Tina will come up and make the introductions.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can't top County Executive's words. So with that, Easton has the whole team this evening, all of whom you'll get a chance to meet, including the actual developers of these wonderful projects. So without further ado, I want to introduce my counterpart at the City of Easton, Mr. John Kingsley, who is the Director of Community and Economic Development for the City of Easton.
Good afternoon, council members. First of all, let me just tell you, it is always an incredible pleasure to work with your Department of Community and Economic Development. They are the best. And I don't just say that because your deputy director used to work for my department. I really do think they are an absolutely tremendous group of people. Always very approachable, very responsive, very supportive. And, you know, they go out of their way to help us find solutions to difficult projects. I can't thank you enough for all that they do for us. So, and this is not the least of which is to help us to move forward an amendment to our LRTA ordinance. It's actually, I guess in some ways, a complete revision of your ordinance because the ordinance that the county council has actually expired at the end of 2022. Ours, it goes out till the end of 2027. So while we're talking about just the addition of properties as it relates to our ordinance, we're talking about actually extending the properties that are currently in the LRTA that we have operational in your ordinance. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, and I'm glad to answer any questions you may have regarding it. So first of all, let's give you a little bit of an overview about, you know, the city's LRTA, and also by way of a little bit of a background, we're doing this a little differently than we have done this in the past. Usually we present a list of properties to you that just, we've kind of said, hey, here are some properties, we'd love to have them included in our LRTA district. They're important to the revitalization and redevelopment of the City of Easton. We're actually going to present projects that are associated with the 9 properties that we're proposing for you here this afternoon. So we're going to talk about the projects that would benefit from the LRTA directly. Okay, so what is our LRTA? Our LRTA is about as standard a LRTA as you're going to come across. It is a 10-year sliding scale tax abatement on property increases resulting from substantial rehabilitation or redevelopment. So it is just the incremental taxes we're talking about abating. Many people think that, that the tax abatement extends to base property taxes. It doesn't. You will always get those base property taxes. So what you're getting paid on these 9 properties now, you will continue to be paid in full every year. So where does the abatement occur? Well, in the first year of the abatement, 100% of the incremental taxes are actually abated. The second year, 10%. The third year, 20%. The first year, there's full abatement of the taxes. In the second year, 10% of the incremental taxes are actually being abated. 20% in the third year are being abated. Then the fourth year, 30, and so on, out to year 11, when you get to the point of the full assessment and the base and incremental taxes are all being paid in full. The city of Easton has a long history in LRTA. We had one in the 1970s. I don't have a lot of detail on that particular LRTA or the success of it, but we apparently thought enough of it to actually reintroduce it in 2012. So that was the second time that we actually had a LRTA. And we, in that 2012 ordinance, we had 925 properties in the city of Easton that were being named to benefit from LRTA. Program was reauthorized in 2018 in the city of Easton. Among other things, we reduced the number of the properties that were in the LRTA district from 925 to 71. So while some people are suggesting, well, we're adding to the LRTA, the reality of it is we've reduced the LRTA considerably over the years since it was reestablished in the city. There are currently 82 properties in the LRTA, and we're looking to add an additional 9. So that would take us to a total of 91, or effectively 10% of the number we originally approved in 2012. There are 72 parcels that are currently receiving LRTA benefit, and these are properties that were introduced into the LRTA continuum somewhere between 2013 and 2022. And on this chart, you can actually see how the county will benefit from those LRTA properties. There's the one at the bottom of the chart, your yellow line. So currently you're receiving $118,000 in change on those 72 properties in real estate taxes. When the LRTA is fully completed on all of them, you will have $257,600. Now, these properties are not maturing at the same time. It's important to mention that some of these have 1, 2, 4, 8 years left in their LRTA, so it doesn't look like a completely, straight line. So the properties, we're going to talk about the properties and the projects that we're considering for LRTA designation. I'm going to give you a quick summary, and then we'll go through them individually. And as Tina mentioned, we do have representatives of the developers here to answer any questions you may have, because we want to make sure if there are details you want to know about them, we can answer them. So 2 properties in the southeast quadrant of Center Square. This is a quadrant that we are actually in the process of redeveloping in the city. You may know we put a fair amount of money into upgrading the quadrant itself. You can also see properties are changing hands and changing facades. For instance, the Wells Fargo building recently changed hands. We also have Josie's, which has undergone a full renovation and looks completely different from those of us who remember it, the way it always was, if you will. On the other side of the quadrant, we have 2 properties that we want to consider for the LRTA designation. 1 through 6 Center Square, which is the old Standard One nightclub, and 8 Center Square, which is referred to lovingly as the National Building, National Bank Building on the southeast quadrant. 1 through 6 Center Square is intended to be a full-service hotel, something the city has been seeking. Another location in the city above and beyond the Grand Estonian. And this one's a special one because it's being undertaken by a developer that's near and dear to the city's heart. The owner of the Townley, the owner of Oak, the owner of several restaurants within the city, and one that takes great care with the properties that they redevelop. 8 Center Square itself is also an interesting project. This is one where the existing structure can't support the entirety of the project. They're going to have to create an entire superstructure over it to allow for the various uses. They're proposing a mixed-use project that would involve not only 1 restaurant, but actually 2, one on the bottom floor, one on the top floor, and 7 market-rate apartments sandwiched in between. And we get on to the projects that I know everybody is pretty supportive of, and these are our affordable housing projects. We have 2 that are being undertaken by Greater Shiloh. One is at 508 West Canal Street. This is the old site of the Paradise Club, which was more or less a nuisance bar on the south side. Shiloh purchased it right after Paradise Club closed down, and has designated it for a large-scale affordable housing project akin to the Mill at Easton that we have in the South Side, which is 55 units of affordable housing. It was undertaken by Pearl. This is one that's being undertaken by Greater Shiloh. The partnering developer has not been yet named, but the one they are working with is a household name in affordable housing, I can tell you that. And this would be a 60-unit affordable housing, truly affordable housing project. Phillips and Charles Streets would be infill owner-occupied, owner-occupied being the key. We don't develop a lot of affordable housing in the city that is owner-occupied, and we need more of it. So these would be owner-occupied, and we're talking about 8 units on available properties that are in Phillips and Charles Street. And then finally, our single and only industrial LRTA is 671 Bushkill Street, also known as the old Circle Systems building. This is the home of, among other things, 3D Mention Media. For those who may have spent some downtime during the holidays, you may have seen the projections that we had on the buildings in Center Square. They actually, are one of the vendors of the equipment that we used for that purpose and helped us to design the actual aesthetic that you got to see. So they propose taking their building, which is about a 22,000 square foot industrial building, use it for their continuing purposes, but also break it up into units that it can be used for maker and small enterprise industrial and manufacturing space. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So let's go through the individual projects. The first one, 1 through 6 Center Square, I mentioned this is our hotel project. This is proposed to be a 7-story, 41-key hotel and conference center. Property would hold 2 restaurants, both on the bottom floors. City's been, as I mentioned before, this is a primary, a recruitment project for the city. We wanted another full-service hotel. We're deeply in need of additional conference facilities. And for anyone who has actually been inside the One Standard building recently, or even saw it when it was, kind of getting to the end of its days, the interior of this property was not well maintained. The exterior is in rough shape itself. The property is, without question, blighted. Total project cost on this particular project is $25 million. We're expecting 30 full-time equivalents to come out of that project. Current assessment is $200,000. So how would the internals of the building make out? Basement, you would have your utilities, storage, and meeting room space. Your first floor would be the hotel entrance, delivery area with the 2 restaurants I previously mentioned. You'd have a commercial kitchen, meeting room, and banquet hall, this conference space I talked about on the 2nd floor. 3 guest rooms on the on the 3rd floor with pre-function space and a terrace overlooking Center Square. And then you'd have on 4 through 6 primarily your guest rooms. There'd be 10 on each floor, with the 7th floor having 8 guest rooms. Design and approvals are in process. Demolition and dismantling is expected to happen this spring. We're hoping for about an 18-month construction timeline from the time construction starts. Structure and architectural plans are complete, and we already have some of the approvals in place, and some of them may need to be revisited due to timing and some changes to the project, but you have your zoning variance in place, planning support, your Historic District Commission has given it a certificate of appropriateness, and you have your land development plan approved. LRTA, the immediately next door to the Great Square Hotel, is the 8 Center Square building, the National Bank building I mentioned. This is Guy Finer's property, and he is proposing to develop in a mixed-use fashion with 2 restaurants, 1 on the top, 1 on the bottom, and 7 units of residential in between. The property's been vacant for about 5 years. I wouldn't say aesthetically it looks blighted, but it is certainly underutilized space and has been for quite a while at this point. We want it to be in productive use, and the proposed uses are exactly in accordance with what we want to see in the southeast quadrant. It's a $3.4 million project. The current assessment's $98,100. Mentioned 7 apartments, 2 commercial spaces. The rooftop commercial space will actually have elevator access directly to it. It will have an overlook of the Center Square and of the Confluence. The restaurant's expected to create 15 new jobs. As far as the project status, building's interior is basically completely demolished. The structural and architectural plans are largely complete. A certificate of appropriateness from the Historic District Commission was provided in December of 2022. That again may need to be revisited depending on the project's scope and any changes that are made to it. And the construction timeline is approximately 14 months from the start. This is one project where the developer has specifically requested that we try to assist them in offsetting the costs of the superstructure I mentioned earlier, which are what is creating the $3.6 million, total project cost. We get onto our affordable housing project. So this is the old Paradise Club location, 508 West Canal Street. This is a rendering done by the previous development partner, Pearl, who was going to be the original development partner, but this will be updated. It is still largely, I think, akin to what we're thinking will occur on site. Again, they are talking about creating 60 units of affordable housing at this location, and they're working with a nationally recognized affordable housing developer. The current assessed value of the property is $76,500. When we get into the layout, you're going to have 12 one-bedroom apartments of about 800 square feet, 32 two-bedroom apartments of about 1,000 square feet, 16 three-bedroom apartments of about 1,250 square feet, and each unit will have its own amenities, its own private balcony, energy appliances, patios, the run. We also expect there will be a lot of community space provided within the facility to allow the tenants to gather and to allow special supportive services to be provided to them, as has been the case with the Pearl project at the Mill at Easton. Eligible tenants need to be 20 to 80% of area median income, and this is important because there aren't many facilities being developed that run this level of low to moderate income. So we're very happy that they are staying with the same model that Pearl used on the Mill at Easton. This runs exactly what we're trying to accomplish. So there will be units allocated to each of those areas of median income. Projects obtained necessary zoning variances, but there are changes in building heights that are proposed to be able to allow for more units that will have to be reviewed. Building plans are going to be submitted next year following receipt of low-income housing tax credits, and I can't understate the importance of the low-income housing tax credits to this project. It simply will not happen without them. So this is the most important aspect of the capital stack, and beyond just having alerted designation, which kind of supports the ongoing costs of operation and makes them continuingly affordable. This designation actually shows community support and community investment for that matter. And these are areas that when PHFA is reviewing low-income housing tax credit applications, they use this as a way to rank projects. They actually provide dedicated scoring on things like this. So we want to maximize that scoring that gives them the best chance of getting the low-income housing tax credits. We're expecting the project to take about 18 months to construct, but that's going to be dependent, the timing of that start is going to be dependent on being able to complete the capital stack and most importantly, the low-income housing tax credits. The other affordable housing projects, this time not rental-based, these would be owner-occupied, involve 4 properties along Phillips Street and Charles Street in the south side. This is 4 properties that are essentially being negotiated independently by Shiloh. We know they've completed negotiations on 2 of them. I think there are 2 that remain. If they choose not to move forward with an affordable housing project there, we wouldn't be supportive of a alerted designation for those properties. I will also say that it is possible that the Housing Development Corporation that the city is creating, which some people may know, we've created Home Easton, which will be the city's first formal housing development corporation, may take on those properties as part of its mission, if you will, to add to owner-occupied affordable housing on the south side. It's important to mention that the city has also already shown their support to this particular project. The county has already shown its support for this project in the form of $100,000 in home funding to Shiloh, and this is to kind of give them community housing development organization status to allow them to continue moving forward with their project and receive the benefits of being a CHODO. Current properties total $81,000 in current assessment. We're expecting the total project cost to be about $2.5 million. Of the 8 homes that would be created, these are semi-attached 2-story homes, 1,500 square feet per home, 3 bedrooms, 1.5 or 2 bathrooms, depending on the configuration. Eligible tenants will need to be at or below 80% of area median income. As I said, the properties are under agreement. There will be some subdivision requirements in this context that they will have to go through. projects is compliant with zoning. There is a paper street, which is Charles Street, that's why it's referenced in here, in this area that could potentially be vacated and allow for additional units to be developed. That's yet to be determined. Construction timeline would be somewhere around 10 months, assuming a start date in 2024. This alerted designation, again, for the reasons I've outlined, will help them avail themselves of other state, potentially federal funding to support their project. It also ensures ongoing affordability. Finally, our industrial LERTA, this is 653, 671 Bushkill Street, also known as the former Circle Systems manufacturing facility. We have an industrial occupant that I've mentioned earlier, 3D Dimension Media, that wants to break this up into subunits to allow it to be used for micro enterprise and supervised, we'll call it manufacturing and maker space. There are in discussions with the idea of bringing a management entity or a technical assistance provider to this particular site to help those projects succeed, similar to what you've seen with the makerspace in Bethlehem. And for that matter, the Ben Franklin incubator would be a much larger scale thing of what I'm talking about. So there are conversations going on with Lafayette College and others to try to bring that kind of technical support, and we think it would be a great addition to the city. I don't know, I started in the city in 1995. We've been talking about an incubator in the city since 1995, and we still yet to have one. So this could be the beginning of that. Again, I said it's 22,000 square foot of building. It will include not only the technical support, but also cutting edge equipment to be able to support the micro enterprises. Current assessment's 115,000. Project layout, the second floor office and conference spaces will be available to all of the tenants, 5,000 square feet. Ground floor will contain all of the manufacturing and development space, 17,000 square feet. That'll include 3D printing, metal and model shop, laser cutting, common inventory storage, and finished product space. Truck loading docks, all available again to each of the tenants. And they also have a dedicated parking lot that has 20 car capacity in it. So they have lots of options, you know, here to be able to attend to the tenants. A lot of, call it infrastructure. Permits and approvals, we're hoping spring of '24. Construction commencement summer, fall of 2024 with about a 12-month turnaround in occupancy, hopefully by the end of 2025. So those are our projects. Now you're going to wonder, well, what's the tax impact? Well, the tax impact, and we used a rather, I would call it very conservative model to come to these numbers. We used projects that were recently assessed through the assessor's office of similar kind and created factors to come to these numbers. But assuming our private investment is going to be $50 million on this, we expect the projected assessed value, once you take into account the fact that we haven't done a reassessment in Northampton County in a while, and we're working with valuations that are based on 30 years ago, you're at somewhere about a projected assessed value of about 5.6 million. Millage rate of about 10, is 10.8 for Northampton County. Your current taxes being paid on the properties are 61, 65, 72. Post-LERTA, they'd be about 60,000, so about a factor of 10x. And then finally, we have a little bit of a graph to show you. So you can see the base taxes are always being paid. That's 61, 65, 72. And then your incremental taxes are going from 6,000 to 60,000 over the next 10 years. Next steps, the city and school district have already approved the LERTA. They actually not only approved it, both bodies approved it unanimously. And the only thing left we need to do is have county council consider an ordinance, addressing these revisions and extending the timeline of the original properties. Just as kind of some closing thoughts, I know some people have issues, obviously, with providing tax benefits to for-profit entities, and I can be one of those people who can play in that role and have frequently, just because there are times when it doesn't make sense. In this particular instance, we are talking about very meritorious, projects, and we're talking about locations in the city that are primary from a redevelopment standpoint. These are areas we want to focus on, and the uses are uses we want to focus on. I think you've heard the mayor mention on many occasions his passion solution for affordable housing. This is something he is standing behind, and we are working towards trying to develop affordable housing in the city to make it a livable place for everyone. So I also just want to say, I mean, when we talk about, economic development districts, I mean, there are plenty of other cities who are more well endowed with economic development districts than we are. The city of Bethlehem has a tax increment financing district, has a CRIZ, it has a KIZ, it has a myriad of these designations that have helped spur, redevelopment. This is the one that the city has chosen to use, and we found it to be very effective. And we hope that you will support these additions and extending the existing properties, for whatever period you find appropriate. I thank you very much for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
In looking at the draft, could you just help me?
Yeah.
It's a 10-year program, correct?
Yes, correct.
And then if you look at the effective date paragraph, it goes out of business on December 31st, 2028. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, when you're looking at, which graph are you looking at? Are you looking at the first one or the one later in the package?
I'm looking at the one that we have had distributed for tonight.
Okay, what's that?
I'm looking at the ordinance.
Oh, the 2028, I have not seen the ordinance, I apologize. I've not seen it. But you say it's out to 2028, which it would require, obviously, the city extending, ours currently goes out to 2027, and the school district follows ours, which, so they would all go, we would have to extend ours to 2028. That's what we would have to do, and we would be more than willing to do that.
But that's the date that's appropriate for you.
Yes, that would be wonderful from our standpoint.
It
Yes.
just doesn't make sense to me that it's a 10-year program and it goes out of business on 20.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I apologize. Let me step back for a second. I believe the county has made it a policy that they generally do 5-year, reviews of these ordinances. So that's why it is going out 5 years. I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe you can go out longer, but I believe you've chosen to reevaluate these on 5-year periods, which is why there is this incongruence between our terms and yours.
If you're comfortable with it,
I also believe that the actual tax incremental financing structure starts, so they have 4 years or 5 years to get it on the books. And then it goes 10 years from there. We're just approving that they can do it till then. So, I mean, it works.
I guess my real question is, are we mirroring the school district and the city?
The city and the school district are in the same timeline, so it is the end of 2027, but ours have never been the same,
I'm done, thanks.
Any other questions?
at least not to my knowledge. I take that back, not to my knowledge. They've never been the same.
All right, thank you, Mr. Giovanni. Just wanted to, a couple questions and then actually had some comments as well.
Sure.
I believe the Canal Street properties, apparently the developers.
There's only one property in Canal Street.
Yeah.
You're talking about the Paradise Club property?
Yeah, the
Yes.
500 West Canal?
Correct.
Yeah, that the developer's working with a nationally recognized.
They are.
Affordable housing
Developer.
developer. Can you go into detail about that a little bit? It's interesting to hear.
I
this.
can't name the entity because they are not public.
Okay.
I can say there are several developers that you would be, you probably have heard of before. I think Neston, are you familiar with the Neston Heights development? I assume that you are.
Very much so.
Okay. Well, Neston Heights was actually developed by an organization called Penrose, and it was actually managed and the property managed by an organization known as Penrose. Penrose is a very, very well-known, nationally known affordable housing developer. There are others like Michaels, for instance. You will hear that name used frequently. In fact, Michaels was intended at one point to be the partner in our Choice Neighborhoods implementation plan submission for the West Ward of Easton, if you happen to read any of the articles about that. They're also, again, a very well-known, nationally recognized affordable housing developer. Pearl themselves, who did the Mill at Easton, is a very well-known, more what I would call regional affordable housing developer. Their primary projects are in Ohio, Pennsylvania, New Jersey.
Okay, all right. In terms of, when we talk about affordable housing, because I know that a lot of us here on this dais, those who aren't here, are approached time and time again about, what is the county doing? What is the city doing? What is our state government, federal government doing about affordable housing? It's a huge issue for folks. Is there any way to kind of quantify what that actually really looks like? I mean, I believe you mentioned median income.
Yes, and that's generally how they're gauged. The eligible tenants are gauged based on their, where they are in household income.
I know it's impossible to gauge what type of rent, say for
Yeah.
instance, the 500 West Canal Street properties are going to be once the project is completed. I know it's impossible to gauge that. I do understand that, but kind of getting a better picture about what affordable housing really does look like with regard to these projects.
I don't have numbers I can throw out to you, and these things have been changing rather rapidly, as you can well understand. I mean, with the market, the way that it has been, even, the affordable housing ranges are increasing. So I would need to get back to you with what that range actually designates, but I can certainly do that. I mean, we have, again,
would be great.
our relationships can tell us exactly what would qualify for our region in that 20 to 80% range. I don't know if anybody here might have an answer directly to that question. Yeah, I didn't think so. This is kind of, that one's a tough one to answer off the top of your head. So, but we will certainly get you that information so you can see what that range looks like.
I appreciate it.
No problem.
And just a comment too, I mean, I was a member of the Easton City Council back in 2012 when the LERTA district was established then. I remember, many discussions Mayor Panto and the council at that time had about those 925 properties throughout the city. And it was at a critical juncture and a critical time within the city's history. After we had been elected, took office in 2008, Mayor, and really laying the foundation of what the local economy in Easton was going to look like for decades to come, and how important the LERTA district was. Took some time, working with a lot of different individuals, a lot of different entities and departments, and at the end of the day, I think we see a city that has prospered in a lot of different ways, a lot of different mechanisms coming together to get it to where it is today. But the LERTA district that was established in 2012 was a big, big reason why we've seen the prosperity in Easton over the past, well over a decade.
And we don't
at this
disagree
point.
with you,
Yeah,
Councilman.
I just wanted to throw that out there because I want to make clear that I do not believe, based on previous votes in my very early tenure here on county council, that I do not believe LERTAs are a bad thing for our communities by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, if it's with regard to the right projects, specifically as we're talking about affordable housing, it's a huge issue on folks and citizens' minds as we're moving forward in the future. This is something that I will be supporting. So thank you very much, Mr.
No
Kingsley.
problem. And just to add on, as I said, I know there's been some, and even when we were with the school district, we needed to clarify this. When you look at the 2012 ordinance, you're talking about 920 properties. We're talking about having 91 at the end of this. I mean, we've reduced the size and scale of the LERTA considerably because we recognize many of those properties probably shouldn't be in the LERTA district.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Mr. Kraft.
112, County Councilman, and approve the 925 properties. And back there, I thought it was, a little excessive, but I really like this going down to 91. I think it's great. I think your projects that you have on the books ready to go is really, really good. Just to clarify our esteemed attorney's question, we are getting the taxes we are getting right now and what the properties are assessed for.
That's correct.
They will not start getting a LERTA tax break until they get a CO, I believe.
That's
On
correct.
their improvements of the property. So it could be 3 years down the road when their LERTA starts, and then it goes for 10 years from there, incrementally to the end of their.
The incremental taxes can't be abated until we know what the incremental
Right. Yeah, you
taxes
don't
actually
know
are.
until you get the
And
actual-
you're not going to know until the property's reassessed. It's actually not even the CO, it's actually reassessment that's going to have to
So I'm
actually
just
occur.
trying to put that out there for everybody who doesn't know what a LERTA is or hasn't
Sure.
heard of them or don't know how they actually work.
Sure.
I think it's a great project. I love to see the number way down there, and every one you brought here, I mean, what are we talking about? 25 over $30-some thousand worth of investment in the city.
You mean, you're talking about, are you talking about the total investment? It's 50 million.
50, and that's unheard of, and that's great. I'm glad to see the city moving forward, and I'll support this 100%. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Kinsley? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
And we also have all of our developer partners are here too, if there are any questions you wanted to raise with them.
You covered it pretty well.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, you covered it very, very well.
Thank you very much for your time. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay. Being on, anything else for the committee that I know of? No?
Do we need a motion to send this forward to
motion
the
to-
full body of council?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Okay, Ken,
I'll second.
and Mr. Warren, second, to move it to county to tonight's meeting. Okey-doke. With that being said, I'll have a motion for adjournment. Second. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Hey, it's good to meet all of you, not on a telephone call. Steve Barron, nice to meet you.